Less than 2 months to go until the presidential election. What moral issues must Catholics consider when going to the polls to choose their new president? Theologian and former head of the Vatican's doctrinal office, Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, shares his thoughts. Both political parties in the U.S. are courting Catholic support. How are the Democrats and Republicans framing their candidates to earn your vote? Co-chairman of the Catholics for Trump, Matt SCHLAPP, and director of Catholic Outreach for Vote Common Good, Patrick Carolan, are here to debate and analyze the issue. And the COVID-19 pandemic continues, but restrictions are still being applied to houses of worship. The Archbishop of San Francisco, Salvatore Cordileone, is here to update us on his efforts to get people back in the pews. The world over begins right now.
Now, Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. We have an incredible lineup for you tonight. Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, Matt SCHLAPP, Patrick Carolan, and Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. First, some news. This week marks the sad 19th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Due to COVID-19, the reading of the names of the fallen will not be done by family members in person at Ground Zero in New York. The names will be recorded by family members, then broadcast via speakers across Memorial Plaza. 6 minutes of silence will be observed throughout the ceremony commemorating when each of the World Trade Center towers were struck and fell, as well as the times corresponding to the attack on the Pentagon and the crash of United Flight 93 in Pennsylvania. President Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden are both scheduled to pay their respects to the Flight 93 National Memorial in Shanksville. Vice President Mike Pence and his wife Karen will attend memorial ceremonies in New York to mark the ceremony. And Pope Francis has accepted the resignation of Bishop-elect of Duluth, Minnesota, Michael J. Malloy. This after accusations surfaced in August that as a priest, he abused a minor in the 1980s. According to a statement by the Diocese of Rapid City, the allegation against Malloy appeared after his appointment to Duluth in June. The diocese commissioned an independent and full investigation, according to canon law, after Malloy received a summary of that report and an allegation against him. He submitted his resignation as the bishop-elect of Duluth. So far, there have been no other allegations of sexual abuse involving Malloy. His installation as bishop was scheduled to take place October 1st. And at his Wednesday audience, Pope Francis addressed what he called the wounds of the coronavirus and how it's afflicted society. He said, quote, "A virus that does not recognize barriers, borders, or cultural or political distinctions must be faced with a love without barriers, borders, or distinctions." He went on to lament partisan interests emerging from the pandemic and urged dialogue with political opponents, saying political enemies and opponents seem to be politically or socially disabled. They appear to be, but only God knows if they are or not. We must love them and we must dialogue. Meanwhile, ahead of the presidential election, both political parties are reaching out to voters of faith, Catholics in particular. Just what is at stake in this year's election, and what moral principles should Catholics keep in mind when going to the polls? Here to share his thoughts, I'm delighted to be joined by theologian and former head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, Cardinal Gerhard Mueller. He comes to us from EWTN studios in Rome. Your Eminence, welcome back to the program.
Welcome. Thank you much.
I want to start with the U.S. bishops and what they've said about voting in their official teaching document on political responsibility, Faithful Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. It reads this way: "In this statement, we bishops do not intend to tell Catholics for whom or against whom to vote. Our purpose is to help Catholics form their consciences in accordance with God's truth. We recognize that the responsibility to make choices in political life rests with each individual in light of a properly formed conscience, and that participation goes well beyond casting a vote in a particular election. Your Eminence, what is a properly formed conscience, and do you think most Catholics possess it at this point, whether in or out of an election year?
Yeah, grace to God. America, the United States are a democratic and free country, and therefore all the voters have the right to vote for those candidates they want to vote for them. But as a Christian and as a Catholic, you need some criteria for the election. And the bishops don't indicate you must vote for them or for them, but they give us, magisterium give us some criteria. This is the doctrine of the church, the moral doctrine and the social doctrine. And we have to look for candidates who are in favor of the life. This is the basis. You cannot say social justice is more important than the life of everybody, also of the unborn children, is the basis, is a gift of God, and the social justice is a duty we have to fulfill, and therefore we must begin with the primacy of these criteria. And this is the right to live from the beginning of the conception until the natural death, and that is a basis for all states who are based on the human rights.
Your Eminence, in the USCCB's introductory letter, and your comments there are a good intro to their Faithful Consciences for Faithful Citizenship document, they have this to say about the protection of the unborn. The threat of abortion remains our preeminent priority because it directly attacks life itself, because it takes place within the sanctuary of the family, and because of the number of lives destroyed. At the same time, we cannot dismiss or ignore other serious threats to human life and dignity, such as racism, the environmental crisis, poverty, and the death penalty. Your Eminence, this seems to be an unequivocal prioritization of the issue of abortion above the other issues. Is that how we should read this?
It's the basis of all is the life, the right to live. And God created everybody according to his image and likeness. And therefore the life is the basis. All the other values have no basis, no reality, social justice and the equality of everybody if you deny the life of the people.
Your Eminence, we are hearing from many areas, even within the Catholic Church, but certainly in the political arena, that all these life issues are at the same level. Some equate support for the death penalty and the environment with support for abortion. Is that a licit comparison in the Catholic mind, in the Catholic theology?
No, I think this is impossible. There are is an order within the rights of human being. If you are looking in the Declaration of the human rights in the history, beginning in the United States until the United Nations in 48, and the other declarations of human rights we have in the modern Constitution, all are beginning with the life, and the life is the basis of all. And we can, as theologians and as Catholics, not discuss first in the political arrangement. We must begin with a moral basis, and all what we are doing, the politics, depends on the moral basis. And the first commandment, or the first one of the most important commandments in the Decalogue, is the respect for the life of everybody. God is a creator of human life, and this is the first respect, is a priority we have in the Catholic Church, and for all Christians is most important.
There seems to be a malicious activism, if you will, attempting to muddy the waters here of Catholic theology to, as you say, serve a political end. I want to get your thoughts, two opposing schools of thought, regarding Democratic candidate Joe Biden, a professed Catholic. David Mills, a Catholic writer in the UK, wrote a piece recently declaring that Joe Biden is not pro-life. He writes, Biden brags about being the one who saved abortion rights by blocking Robert Bork from being named to the Supreme Court. He seems to have no problem with the party's driving out its pro-life wing and even deselecting the pro-lifers it has in office. The Catholic candidate doesn't even try the old personally opposed butt line. He's all in. Biden's not pro-life because he doesn't intend to be. He doesn't want what pro-lifers want. The term doesn't include people who think and speak as he does. What are your thoughts on that piece? And would you say he's judging Biden's soul or his Catholicism, or is he merely pointing out the troubling policy that Biden has embraced?
Yeah, judging a person is only can only God do. But we don't judge about persons. We do judge about some attitudes and the thinking. And if you are Catholic, you can only be pro-life, for the life given by God. To be Catholic, to be a Christian, is believing in God, the creator of everybody. And you cannot say, I am a Catholic, I am a Christian, I believe in God, but I accept the legislation which includes the possible killing of people in the mother womb and outside the mother womb. That is absolutely clear. I don't see where there are the problems.
Father Thomas Reese, a Jesuit formerly of America Magazine, writing in late August in the Religious News Service, came to this conclusion, and I want your theological reaction to it. Here's what he wrote. So a Catholic Republican can vote for Trump even if his policies promote racism or subject immigrants to subhuman living conditions, as long as the voter's intent is not to support those positions. And a Catholic Democrat can vote for Biden, even if his policies promote abortions and gay marriage, as long as the voter's intent is not to support those positions. In Catholic theology, intention, why you are doing something, is essential to an understanding of the morality of an action. Your reaction to Father Reese's theological reasoning here, Cardinal Mueller?
I think he is confused, and this is a lie. We cannot compare these things. I don't think that Trump is in favor of racism. It is an attribution. I think that is absolutely wrong. I cannot imagine that a person with a conscience can be a racist. It's impossible, because all we are created by God, and therefore racism is absurd. We are brothers and sisters, but the basis of all the human rights is life, and that is the most important thing. The other thing are consequences. Could be that some politicians are not always consequent, but the principles, the first principles, must be very absolutely clear.
Cardinal, I want you to focus, though, on what Father Reese is attempting here. He's really creating a loophole, and he's saying, so long as you're not voting for Biden because he supports abortion, it's okay to vote for him. Is that the right way to look at this vote, theologically, morally?
That is a sophistic argumentation. The Vatican Council, Second Vatican Council, said that the abortion is an abhorrent crime, and nobody can accept it. And the Cardinal Ratzinger and the Pope John Paul II, they made declarations that all Catholic politicians are obliged in their conscience to fight against abortion and other crimes against human life.
You've said the American Constitution is the shining example for all the world. Do you feel the integrity of the Constitution is in danger of being undermined, as well as the freedom of worship, the freedom of speech, in peril as a result of this election and the election we're facing?
The United States is the most powerful country, America first, but first also in the responsibility for the religious liberty, for the liberty of speech and thinking. And America must go back to his roots in this struggle which they had with the absolute understanding of kingdom in England in these times, and the absolutism or totalitarianism in the modern world we had in Germany, in Russia,
Right.
Soviet Union, or in China today, or North Korea, or in other countries of the world. The terrorism we have in this world is a disrespect against the human life. And therefore, the United States must lead the Western democratic, free world like in the times after the Second World War or during the Second World War. We have other conditions, but the task and the mission of the United States are remaining until today, and I hope that the United States will take over their responsibility for the a good future of whole the globus.
Your Eminence, how has the growth of moral relativism, something about which Pope Benedict XVI repeatedly warned, how has that contributed to this current crisis we're seeing, not only in the United States, but around the world?
In our Christian thinking, we must take over our responsibility, not to withdraw against this new forms of the moral relativism. Moral relativism will be the end of the mankind. It is only destructive. And we have these reactions also in the United States. They are killing and going around the streets and destroying all that is not a good example for the world. All the tensions which are existing in the United States and every society can only be overcome if you go back to your values.
Before I let you go, this Catholics for Biden group, a member of which is coming up shortly, they are openly endorsing Joe Biden as the Catholic candidate for president. Now, Donald Trump is not even Catholic, so perhaps this is academic. But would you say it is possible for any Catholic to endorse a candidate given their public record and platform that the Democratic Party now represents, where the pro-life plank has been dismissed, it opposes church teaching on family and religious freedom? Can a Catholic support somebody like that, much less vote for them?
I think as we are citizens in a pluralistic state with religious freedom, and I don't support a candidate in Germany because he is Catholic, but because he has the right understanding from life and the basic for the human rights. And it's better to vote for a good Protestant than for a bad Catholic. No? We must judge according to that what they are doing, and not only to their words. That is a biblical criteria. Look to the fruits.
Very good. Cardinal Mueller, thank you so much for your time. Cardinal Gerhard Müller's most recent book, Roman Encounters, is still available from EWTN's Religious Catalog. Thank you so much, Your Eminence.
Thank you so much.
Matt SCHLAPP and Patrick Carolan are coming up, but first, a little bit of news. The National Catholic Prayer Breakfast is going virtual this year. It will honor U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr. The breakfast had been scheduled for March, but was postponed to September. AG Barr will receive an award which honors laity who promote the new evangelization and the Church's mission in their lives. Barr, who's Catholic, has served 2 presidents as U.S. Attorney General. The decision to honor Barr is not without controversy. Some critics on the left claim the move is scandalous, demanding that organizers immediately rescind the invitation. They cite Barr's support for the death penalty and other issues. More on this in our next segment. Here to debate and discuss the issues as we move into this presidential election, I'm pleased to be joined by co-chair of Catholics for Trump, Matt SCHLAPP, and Patrick Carolan of Catholics for Biden. Thank you both for being here. I want to start with this Catholics for Biden Zoom event. It took place last week. There were several speakers, including Senator Dick Durbin. You, Patrick, you're a member of Vote Common Good. That's the organization you're officially with, but you took part in this Zoom call. I want to play what Sister Simone Campbell said about Catholic voters and get your reaction.
One of the things that is true is that Catholics are a critical percentage of the voting public, and white Catholics have gotten it wrong in the past. Our whole theme is helping Catholics see that they're multi-issue voters. They need to be multi-issue voters to be in harmony with what Pope Francis teaches. Often we hear from Catholics who hear, either from the pulpit or from other teachers, that they can only vote on a single issue. That's not our faith. That's never been our faith. And in fact, the reversal of Roe v. Wade, or the outline of abortion, has never been our faith. What has been our faith all these years has been caring for the unborn.
Matt, one could argue that everyone is a multi-issue voter, but it seems this whole effort is designed to move Catholics away from the clear teaching of the U.S. bishops and the Pope that life, opposition to abortion and euthanasia is the preeminent issue. What's going on here, in your opinion?
Yeah, no, Raymond, I agree with you. I'm troubled when I hear a religious sister somehow say that every issue is like every other issue. You know, our faith is all about the fact that there are some teachings that are primary and some teachings that are important, but less integral. And the same thing is true when it comes to public policy issues. You know, if a government officially denies the right to life, the other rights that the government also tries to engender don't mean much. It is the fundamental, foundational idea of respecting the individual. And I really think it's a problem. I can understand that there are liberal Catholics and conservative Catholics, but I don't think any Catholic should be pushing any heretical views. It's okay for them to have their own personal views, but they can't say they're consistent with our faith, and definitely somehow justifying the killing of children in the womb should never be justified ever by anyone, certainly somebody who has taken these vows.
Patrick, your reaction. I mean, doesn't abortion most directly hit the poor? I mean, isn't that standing up for the voiceless and those without a voice in our society?
So first of all, let me say, Sister Simone never said that we shouldn't care about the unborn. She very clearly has stated that we should care about the unborn, but that it's not the only issue. So let's not spread mythology around that Sister Simone said we shouldn't care about the unborn. The issue.
Well, wait, we just heard her say opposition to Roe v. Wade is not a prerequisite, and she's basically saying, okay, we should care for the unborn, but she seems to be embracing, with a Catholic embrace, the idea that you can allow abortion on demand up until birth or up until death.
That's not what she's saying at all.
Oh, really?
So
okay, explain.
You shouldn't be putting words in her mouth. She's not saying that at all.
Well, the audience heard her, so I'm not putting any words in anybody's mouth, including yours. Go ahead.
Hear that. The audience didn't. That's not what they heard. That's not what she said. And if you would let me finish, then I could say.
Go ahead.
Thank you. What Sister Simone was saying, and what a lot of people are saying, what Pope Francis said, is this is not the only issue. You know, God doesn't care more about children who die through abortion than he does about the 15,000 children that die every day from hunger and hunger-related diseases. God doesn't say this child is less important because they died of starvation than this child who dies in the womb. The question is, and the question we all have to start thinking about is, are we really doing anything to end abortion? Overturning Roe versus Wade is not going to end abortion. Criminalizing, demonizing women who have abortion is not going to end abortion. What we should be talking about, and we should be talking about this as a whole together without attacking each other, without saying, you know, you're anti-women because you want to have abortion, or somebody else is a child killer because they believe in pro-choice. What we should be talking about is what are the steps we can take to reduce the number of abortions. You know, I think we also have to look at the question of if a woman's life is in danger. I don't know what your two gentlemen's position is on that. My position is she should be allowed to have an abortion if her life is in danger. If a 12-year-old is raped by her uncle, should she be allowed to have an abortion? Those are all questions that should be answered and discussed in a civil fashion. Then we can go about and start to talk about how we can end abortion. What are the steps we need to take? You can look at Western Europe, for instance, which has the most liberal abortion laws in the world, and their abortion rate is way lower than the United States.
Not true.
You can look at a state like Colorado.
Go ahead, Matt. Patrick, let me let Matt get in on here. Go ahead, okay. Matt, respond.
I appreciate this, but you can't care for an unborn child if you think it's okay to legally terminate that child. So there is a real problem and incongruity with the logic there. Second of all, as we know, under the 8 years of Obama, these statistics on poverty in America specifically all were exacerbated by his economic policies. And in fact, many of those same populations saw better economic situations under the Trump policy. So I don't know, I think that's a little bit of a red herring that somehow someone who's pro-life like myself doesn't also care about the poor. I do care about the poor. And as far as these very tough cases that women face, especially women with unplanned pregnancies, single women, what you shouldn't be doing as a Catholic is justifying the decision to terminate your child. What the Catholic Church is very clear on is that we should give all the health care. Abortion is never health care. We should give all the health care that we can possibly provide to that unborn child and to that mother. And we shouldn't kill a child because of the sins of that child's father. And you should know that. And this is important for us to talk about, I agree, in a civil way, because America is embracing life. And at the same time, American politicians, and too many Catholic politicians, including Joe Biden, have resulted in some of the most permissible abortion laws, abortions up until the time of birth. And in fact, in the state of Virginia, where I live, we have a governor and too many Democrats in Congress who even think a post-birth abortion is acceptable, paid for by the parishioners of St. Joseph's Church, where Joe Biden is a member. And I think that these are clear problems in his approach as a Catholic politician.
Yeah,
okay,
and that's
Gary,
not true that
I want
Joe
to move
Biden
on.
believes that you should have abortion up until birth. That's not true that most liberal Catholics believe that. You can not agree with the concept that we should be focusing and we should only vote for a candidate who's anti-abortion and still be opposed to abortion. Those two don't go hand in hand. You can certainly agree. I'm a strong proponent of consistent ethics of life. And let me say, my wife and I have adopted several children. We've fostered several children. So we've gone above and beyond what we believe Catholic parents should be doing. There's a waiting list of children waiting to be adopted, waiting to be placed into foster care. So when people say we should do, the argument is we should do everything we can while they're in the womb, but once they're born, they're on their own. And that just doesn't work.
Patrick, that's a bit of a red herring.
Let me finish.
Patrick,
I let you finish.
let me finish, Patrick. Let me finish. Look, if you have a consistent ethic of life, there has to be a hierarchy of issues, as we just discussed with Cardinal Mueller. If you don't have life, you can't defend that child from poverty or improve that child's environment or clean up the streets that child lives in. And I think we're losing something in all of this because, trying to dislodge the pro-life issue or muddy it somehow. I want to move on because I've got lots of ground to cover. A new website was launched by Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice, run by Sister Campbell, whom we heard from. And it asks voters the following: do you follow the Pope's call to bring the sacred issues with you into the voting booth? Our Catholic voter quiz examines the major issues that Pope Francis says Catholics and all people of goodwill must include in their decision. The results of our quiz will help you decide which presidential candidate to vote for in November. It basically leads voters to believe that they can trade immigration policy and housing for the preeminent issue of abortion. Is this an honest and fair way for Catholics to evaluate what the Church requires as they go into the voting booth? Matt SCHLAPP.
Look, I haven't actually seen the questionnaire, Raymond, but I do believe that there are some issues that are more important than other issues. And I do believe that Catholics, there's a diversity of politics that Catholics have. But one of the things that I think Donald Trump and Mike Pence have been able to do is bring over a lot of Catholics who are Democrats, a lot of Catholics who are independent, a lot of Catholics who might disagree with President Trump on certain issues or the way he talks about certain issues. But because they're practicing Catholics, they go to church, they accept the doctrines of the church, they don't try to make excuses for why the doctrines are actually too hard for people to follow, even though we know that the road can be tough, that those voters are actually very attracted to Donald Trump. And one of the things we know about presidential politics, and I believe it's very true this cycle, there are two groups of voters that I think will determine who the next president is. African-American voters, of which there is a sizable portion who are Catholic, and Catholic voters. And as we know, Donald Trump, through exit polls, Donald Trump got a majority last time. And the question for these Catholics going to the voting booth this time, are they going to listen to a nun who's associated with the Biden campaign, or are they going to listen to their conscience, which has been properly formed, mostly through Catholic formation, on the issues that really matter? And what issue could be more important than the family and the protection of unborn life?
Patrick, your reaction, I mean, to say that this is how the Pope would vote, isn't that a bit presumptuous? I mean, the Pope's called abortion like hiring a hitman, okay? So just because some issues are sacred doesn't mean they're all equal, do they?
Well, let me first say that I agree with Matt that I think Catholics are going to go to the polls, and I think Catholics are going to determine the outcome of the election, particularly in key states like Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. You know, if you look at the numbers from 2016, Donald Trump got about 65% of the white Catholic vote. I think he ended up with about 52% of the overall Catholic vote, but I believe in the white Catholic was about 65%. And I think that, yes, Catholics need to go and vote their conscience. I think that Catholics, I spent a fair amount of time with Vote Common Good out on the road. We just finished doing a survey, which I'm happy to send you guys if you haven't seen it yet, of Catholics in those 6 states. And, you know, our results showed that Catholics care about character, that they're very disturbed with Donald Trump lying. They're very disturbed with his divisiveness. And while they also look at abortion as an issue, they look at the whole picture and say, we're not going to vote for this person based on these. I have a friend who's a Catholic woman who voted for Donald Trump in 2016. I'm talking to her about her, you know, who she's going to vote for. And she recently said to me, I decided I'm voting for Biden. And, you know, she's very opposed to abortion. And I asked her why. And she said, I watched the Democratic convention and I saw the clip of Joe Biden with that young boy who had a stuttering problem. And I saw his compassion. She said, I saw how he reacted. And then I put that next to Donald Trump in 2016, I know, but Patrick, when he made fun of the reporter. And I looked at those two images and I said, which one of these two best represents Christ? And that's why I decided to vote.
Well, go ahead, Matt, very quickly react to that, then I got to move on.
I'd love to talk about the two conventions. I thought that the Republican convention fully embraced this American experience, which includes a wholehearted embrace of people of faith. Under God was never, not once, taken out of our pledge. There were prayers from people of faith and calls to prayer for the country from speaker after speaker. There was that wonderful fighting nun who said that our greatest weapon in this battle for evil, for the soul of this country, is the rosary. It was a full embrace of people of faith, including Catholics. And I'm very proud of the juxtaposition with the Democratic Party that has taken God out of its platform at times, that seems to be hostile to the family, that continues to think it's fine to use the parishioners' money to pay for these abortions up until the end of life. And when it came to the question of opening schools and Catholics and bishops feeling safe in opening up their schools, Donald Trump was full-throated in supporting those families and those principals and those pastors. We heard nothing from Joe Biden, except for the fact that he might want to shut down the economy again. That's not going to be good for Catholic businesses or Catholic families.
Yeah. Patrick, I also have to say one of the issues that's kind of getting skirted and lost in all of this, I mean, we keep hearing about, well, the environment and immigration reform, and that somehow offsets Joe Biden's support for abortion on demand. But what's being lost in this, it seems to my eye, is the religious liberty conversation. You know, Joe Biden's already on record saying he's going to take the Little Sisters of the Poor to court to try to force them to pay for contraceptives and abortifacients. Isn't that a problem for Catholics? Do you have concerns about that position as a Catholic?
Well, first of all, the Poor Sisters of Clare are Franciscans, and I'm Franciscan, so I respect the work that they do. I think that, you know, the whole concept of religious freedom and religious liberty is something that's misconstrued. In 1840, the U.S. Catholic Bishop of South Carolina, Bishop England, wrote a letter to the Secretary of State, and in that letter he said that slavery was a Catholic teaching, and that to do away with slavery would be a violation of our religious liberty and our religious freedom. So I think we have to be
what does that
very
have to do with the Little Sisters of the Poor? Patrick, what does that have to do with the Little Sisters of the Poor serving old people in Washington? No, you're confusing the issue. You're equating their service to the poor and being required to pay for contraceptives with slavery, Patrick. That's outrageous. I'm sorry. That's outrageous and insulting to my audience.
I'm talking about the issue of religious freedom and religious liberty and how misconstrued that issue is. I'm very much supportive of the Sisters of Clare not having to provide birth control to their members. I think that's fine. I have no problem with that. I have a problem with the issue of religious freedom being misused over and over and being used to be divisive, to divide us as a people of faith, and to separate us. That's what's happening, and that's what I have a problem with.
Matt, your response, quickly.
Yeah, the great thing about our faith is it unites us to our Creator. And at the point when our faith leads to division, sometimes that's because it requires us to take on evil. And I can't think of a greater evil in our society than the federal government using its power to force people of faith to pay for abortion-inducing drugs, especially nuns who've taken a vow of chastity and who serve their lives in furtherance of the interests of the poor, which apparently Catholics for Biden seem to think that they have the calling card on helping the poor. If you want to help the poor so much, why do you hurt people that live their lives in dedication to serving those poor people?
I want to move on, guys. At a campaign event on Wednesday, Vice President Mike Pence had this to say about Trump when introducing him. Watch.
I want to bring greetings from the most pro-life president in American history. You know, I couldn't be more proud to serve alongside a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of life.
Patrick, at the Biden Catholic event this week, they said that Trump is not the most pro-life president in history. Can each of you tell me why you believe that statement is true or not true? Patrick, I'll let you start.
Well, I absolutely don't think it's true, because I think being pro-life is a lot more than just abortion. I believe pro-life is consistent ethics of life, and separating children from their parents at the border is not pro-life. Destroying the climate is not pro-life. The death penalty is not pro-life. So you could say that Donald Trump is the most anti-abortion president if you want, and I'm not sure I believe that. But you can't.
Well, he's anti-poverty too, because he did raise the boats of people. He raised employment and brought up a lot of those impoverished neighborhoods and created opportunity zones. So I guess you could make the argument that he's anti-poverty too, right?
I wouldn't make that argument at all, because I know people, and I've worked in those neighborhoods. Those people haven't been helped. Who he helped was the wealthy and the corporations.
Oh wow,
Matt, I'll let you respond.
Okay, so of course, as we all know, President Obama is the one who purchased those cages, and it was his policies where he was called the deporter-in-chief by many Hispanic rights groups during his 8 years as president. And so many of these photos they put out on the border were actually photos taken while Obama was president. And when you look at this whole question about how Hispanics vote, or this whole question of immigration, what you actually see with Hispanics who are in this country legally, like my wife's parents, is that they like the idea of immigration being orderly, and they like the idea of people not being allowed to cut in line. What could be more consistent with our Christian values and the idea that you follow the laws and you wait your turn, the first shall be last, etc. So I think when you try to bring up issues like climate change and all these other issues that you call pro-life, I'm fine, Patrick, you and I can have disagreements on what will actually help the climate and what will help individuals. But if you try to jam it all up into this question about the dignity of the human being, I think what you're doing is making it more palatable for people to vote for anti-life policies with some nice wrapping paper. And what I'd like to do is look at each one of these issues separately. On the question of the climate, there is no question that the way that we've handled the tax code with this great reduction in the corporate tax rate, the number one thing those reductions have gone to is upgrading environmental scrubbers in manufacturing plants, and we're bringing those jobs home in America, which is going to help American families. If dads and moms can get the jobs they need to pay for the bills for those families, I bet they'll want to have more kids, and I bet more people will feel like they can make it in this country. It's these policies that are helping these very families. And I'm going to tell you, when you start to respect that life in the womb, and when our country embraces that concept, God will honor this country and honor the families who protect that life.
Okay, I mentioned earlier this year's National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. It's going to be streamed online. It's going to honor Attorney General William Barr, a move which is garnering some controversy. Matt, is Bill Barr not worthy of, or let me start with Patrick on this one. Is Bill Barr not worthy of that public honor? I know some members of the group of which you're a member, the Catholics for Biden, took issue with Barr getting that honor. Why?
Well, yeah, let me say it wasn't just people who were part of Catholics for Biden, but the Association of Catholic Priests took issue with that and issued a statement about William Barr being honored. So you could, take it up with the priests all around the country who were very much opposed to William Barr being honored. I think that, he's done more to promote the death penalty, which I'm very much opposed to. And I also think that, his actions as Attorney General have not been Catholic. He has not been promoting the message of Jesus while he's been Attorney General. So I wouldn't, but listen, I am not part of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. They have a right to honor whoever they want to honor. That's their business. They can honor whoever they want to honor. I was honored by the White House when President Obama was president. I'm sure there are a lot of people who didn't like that and thought I should never have been honored. I also, by the way, to respond to what Matt said earlier about President Obama's building cages, I protested when Obama did that as well. In fact, I got arrested in front of the White House protesting when Obama was president over that issue. So for me, it's, doesn't matter who the president is, it's the issue.
Yeah. Well, and playing out that logic, Patrick, I mean, you mentioned that Bill Barr shouldn't be honored as a Catholic because of his support for the death penalty. But Biden should be honored as a Catholic and made president and supported by Catholics, given his support of abortion on demand?
Well,
I don't understand how that adds up.
First of all, again, you have to, I'm not going to agree with you that Biden's position is abortion on demand.
Oh, really?
And I think Biden would be interested in talking about restrictions on abortion, particularly in the third trimester. He's certainly in favor of abortion on demand earlier, so you could win that argument on that point.
Yeah.
But
yes.
But it's not.
And he's
like
against the Hyde Amendment, and he's against the Mexico City policy, which Patrick, he used to be in support of. Joe Biden used to be a pro-life Catholic senator from Delaware. He's a very different man today. We just have to say that.
Yeah, he did. He was much more pro-life. I think he also would want to institute programs that would help reduce the number of abortions. He would do lots of stuff to help reduce the number of abortions. I firmly believe that if Joe Biden were the president at the end of his 4 years, the abortion rate would be much lower than it is today. Again,
Matt, I'm going to give you the last word on
you
this.
asked a question about honoring.
Yes, we know. Let me jump here, Patrick.
Pat, let Matt get in here.
Okay.
We understand what Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, their number one goal when it comes to these questions, and that is also to fund Planned Parenthood, which the president has taken really heroic steps to end. And as far as Bill Barr's job as Attorney General and his faith, I just have to say he has served with honor. He has stood up against anti-Catholic bigotry. He has made certain that our right to practice our faith is unencumbered by the government. You know, when it came to the shutdown, there were certain blue state socialist governors that said that they would put a tougher burden on a church to open than a bar. And what our Attorney General said is, no, I'm not going to allow you to do that. That's inconsistent with our Bill of Rights. And I can't know Bill Barr's heart. I'm not the judge of his heart. The Lord above is. But I will say this. He has brought such honor to people in the Catholic community with his exemplary service, his superior intellect. And I think it's a very deserving tribute that he get this honor.
Patrick, you want to react very quickly? Where do you think this election is going to end? Where do Catholics ultimately go? Very quickly.
I think Catholics are going to end up voting for Joe Biden, and I think Joe Biden's going to be elected president. And I do believe strongly that Catholics are going to be the determinant of who gets elected.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have you back after the election. Matt, you're looking into your crystal ball. What are you seeing?
I agree with Patrick. Patrick, I'll give you this. We said it twice now. Catholics, I also believe African Americans, but Catholics will determine who the next president is. Go to church. Catholic voters will vote overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. But then you have this question of cultural Catholics. Will enough of them also support Donald Trump? You know what issue I think will really turn them, Raymond? The violence in our cities, the violence in our streets, and the president's wonderful support of people who wear a uniform, including cops and first responders. I think there's a lot of Catholic voters who love a cop. They'll be voting for Donald Trump.
Well, as the Hispanic in this group, I'll say keep your eye on that Hispanic vote, particularly the Catholic Hispanic vote. That could be determinative here in many of these swing states and certainly in places like Florida and Texas. Gentlemen, thank you for your contributions. We'll have you back throughout the process here. Last month, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone called on the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed, to lift unfair restrictions placed on celebrating the Mass and the number of faithful allowed to gather at any one time. Since then, Mayor Breed has announced a new timeline for reopening the city, including some changes to the Mass. Joining me now to discuss this and much more, Archbishop of San Francisco, Salvatore Cordileone. Your Excellency, when last we spoke, you were allowed to celebrate Mass for only 12 people out of doors. I want to play what Mayor London Breed said about her new guidelines.
Houses of worship will be able to allow individual prayers and outdoor services for up to 50 people. And that will begin mid-September, and we'll be able to provide the specific date once we have confirmed the date and make sure that we're in touch with those various businesses with the appropriate guidelines.
Wait. So you can still only have 50 people outside? What about Mass in your cathedral? Is this acceptable to you?
First of all, what's most troubling is the words she used to open up that statement. Houses of worship will be allowed. The government has no right to allow or disallow houses of worship to worship. That right it's a natural right. It's guaranteed by the First Amendment. The government has no authority to tell us whether or not we can worship. The government has the authority to tell us what we have to do to ensure public safety when we worship. So this, to me, is the most concerning thing. The second most concerning thing is their inconsistency with following what they claim to be following the science. No, this is utterly unreasonable. Why 12? Why 50? Why 100? Why don't they allow any or allow no limit at all for street protests? Why not 1,000 if the space is large enough and the people can be 6 feet apart? They allow people to go into the parks as long as they stay 6 feet apart, which they don't always do. So why a particular number? And then the indoor service, they're speaking about goals now. The goal is 50 outdoors by mid-September. The goal is by the end of September, indoors at 25% capacity to a maximum of 25 people. Again, where's the science on this? A room that can seat 100 people is treated the same as our St. Mary's Cathedral that can seat 2,500. And that just seated. There's lots of room for people to stand up in the back. So it's at less than 1% capacity at 25 people. This makes absolutely no sense, especially when we can keep our churches safe by opening doors, opening windows, airflow, ensure the distancing, people are stationed. I've said this ad infinitum. Churches can be safer than any other indoor space.
Archbishop, how does the mayor justify permitting hundreds of people in a grocery, but no one in a cathedral for worship? And what are your options here? Have you spoken to the city?
I've had a number of conversations, but it doesn't go anywhere. I explain all of this. I explain the inconsistency of applying. I understand the principles. Well, I understand the science behind them. And I agree with the principles, but it's the inconsistency in the way that they're being applied. And they can't answer my questions. Why they're more restrictive with us than they are with others. So I've had these conversations. They don't answer the questions, and they just continue forward because they can do it. There's nobody to stop them. So we need to get creative in finding ways to witness to our faith and to show the unfairness of what they're doing, which is why we started these multiple masses in our cathedral plaza, and other parishes that have the priest to be able to do it in the space are doing the same thing. Multiple simultaneous masses to accommodate as many people as possible, but still technically in keeping with the local health order.
Wow. Now, we all know the weather in San Francisco, and I know you all are enduring fires now, but things are going to be getting cooler. These outdoor restrictions may not last much longer, we hope. Do you think you'll be able to celebrate indoors in the coming months?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Already we've had wide variety of weather. About 3 weeks ago, this is very, very unusual in California. We had lightning storms on Sunday morning about 3 weeks ago. Last Sunday, it was hot. It was in the 90s. It was so hot I could barely hold the chalice. I could only, when I purified, only sip the water. I couldn't take a mouthful. That's how hot it was. So we've had extremes in temperature, and when it starts, it'll stay hot here for about another month. Then yes, it will start cooling down. The rains will come in November. I don't know where it's so unpredictable. Things seem to be changing from day to day, and it's hard to know what's going to happen next.
Well, we'll keep monitoring this and stay on top of it, and I hope you stay in touch with us. I want to follow up on this story. I need to ask you about a movement that's been really spreading across the country. It's called Unite Our Nation. And it's working to bring the country together through the power of the Eucharist and the Rosary. It takes faith onto the streets of America. Last month, 2 Wisconsin bishops led hundreds of faithful on a Eucharistic procession through the riot-ravaged streets of Madison on the Feast of the Assumption. Now, next Saturday in New Berlin, Wisconsin, there'll be another Eucharistic procession. And in October, they expect them in Arkansas and Michigan. What is this movement? Are you planning anything like this in your diocese?
I've formed a strategy committee to determine ways we can, in compliance with the law, manifest our faith. So this is certainly something that we're going to look into. It's a way of, unite our nation. It's uniting Catholics around our faith. This is something I think that is beginning to galvanize our people, bring them together. And the more this drags on, the more this is happening. I sense this from my people here in San Francisco. They're getting very impatient with this, that they're getting outraged. And these are people that are not inclined to be combative, but they're want to start agitating. So I formed a strategy, and we will certainly look into this. I see kind of what's happening now, what happened here in California about a year ago when there was this bill introduced to lift for the seal of confession, lift the protection of the seal of confession. When Catholics united, it didn't matter where you stood on the ecclesial or ideological or theological spectrum, Catholics all united and stopped it. This is what can happen when we unite. I also want to point out here in San Francisco that there's a petition drive that has been started in supporting my statement to the mayor to allow for Mass by the Benedict XVI Institute. People can actually go online and sign that petition at benedictinstitute.org. It's a petition supporting allowing of public worship here in San Francisco. So it's another example of how this is beginning to galvanize our people, and we need to unite and speak in solidarity and speak with one voice. Unite our nation is another way of doing this all throughout the nation. Yes, and we will be about this.
Archbishop, I cannot believe the courts did not give you all some, cover for this and back your claims here. It seems such an open and closed case of constitutional frustration here. They're frustrating the rights, your constitutional rights to worship. I mean, the religious expression is at the heart of who we are as a people. So, but I guess given that ruling by the courts, you're constrained. There really is very little you can do aside from publicly object and civil disobedience, I guess.
It is very constraining at this time. The courts have been inconsistent. Now, as far as I know, there hasn't been a case decided on the merits of the case. They've been, at least not at the Supreme Court level. There's been
Correct.
These denials of injunctions. So the perfect example of what you were talking about is the case out of Nevada, actually, the Calvary Chapel case in Nevada that sued the governor because he allowed casinos and bars to operate, but very restrictive on churches. And the church, now this wasn't deciding the case itself, but the church was denied injunctive relief. And the dissenting justices said, the point you were making and the point I've been making is that people don't have a First Amendment right to gamble in a casino or to drink in a bar. They have a First Amendment right to worship in a house of worship. So why do they put these other secular activities that are not protected by the Constitution above a fundamental right that is protected in the Constitution, with basically a founding principle of our nation? It makes absolutely no sense. So that is something that's very distressing. But apparently the courts are not unanimous on this, and I think this is something that still needs to be settled through the court system.
I agree. It needs to be litigated because the inconsistency is simply not tenable. It's just not. Archbishop, thank you. We will continue to stay on top of your case, and we wish you the best. And you can find out more about Unite Our Nation and how your parish can participate at uniteournation.net. And before we go, my first picture book, The Spider Who Saved Christmas, is coming October 15th, just in time for the holidays. It's an ancient legend, a retelling of one, and it's tied to the Christmas story. It's full of suspense and points to the hope that can be found even in the darkest places. You and your family will love it. You can pre-order it now at EWTN's Religious Catalog, Amazon, or visit discoverlegends.com for more info and a sneak peek. All 3 installments of the Will Wilder saga are also available. You can go to willwilderbooks.com for a preview and order yours today. Don't forget, we are a podcast the world over, can be taken with you wherever you are. Download us at iTunes or Spotify. That's all the time we have for now. Be sure to catch us next week. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Thanks for watching. Bye now.